Hello and welcome. My name is Roger Quayle, and you are listening to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. Hello there, and welcome back to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts with me, your host, Roger Quayle, and thank you for joining me. We're up to gig 45, and this is my first ever proper jazz concert. Nothing to do with the two lads who did Moon Safari in the 1990s. Allh were a free jazz trio from Chicago. And this, for them, was a rare trip to the UK. So, gig 45, we're off down to London to see Allh at the Lyric Theatre in Hammersmith on Sunday, the 17th of May, 1981. Here we go. Sunday morning. The Free Jazz Express, bound for London St Pancras, flams and rolls over the points as it leaves Sheffield Midland Station. I'm on board with bandmate Charlie Collins, Charlie's pal and fellow saxophonist Derek Saw, and John Capes, owner of Rare and Racy, Sheffield's finest musical outlet for those with offbeat tastes. Psst! Cans of Guinness are sprung open. Salty fingers rummage in crisp packets, and the Sunday papers are passed around. Here we are then, 3 jazz messengers and 1 jazz passenger. In my musical education, I am happy to play Kwai Chang Kane to Charlie's Master Khan. A few years older than me and way more worldly, he's the only person I know who has seen both Jimi Hendrix and Aretha Franklin live. Charlie remembers when MOR Balladeers Chicago were blowing minds with freeform guitar wig-outs as Chicago Transit Authority. He's the only man I know who can terrify the bejesus out of his sax, and then, with nary the lick of his lips, slip into the glorious riff from Move On Up. In the 18 months we were in DVA together, he's taken me under his wing and shielded me from some of the more bacchanalian excesses the band had a well-deserved reputation for. The 4 of us are off to see Allh, a free jazz trio from Chicago who are on a rare trip to the UK. I've learned from Charlie that the Windy City has played a critical role in the development of jazz, being the base for the formation in 1965 of the Association for the Advancement of Creative Musicians, or AACM for short. One of the founders of the AACM, Steve McCall, is the man behind the traps in Allh. As well as seeing the gig, Charlie and I have some musical business of our own to attend to. We are staying in Pimlico with Rod Pierce. Rod being the owner of Fetish Records, who just released the second DVA album, Thirst, and who has plans to release a live recording of the band's performance at the Fetish Night Out at London's Lyceum Theatre back in January. Charlie is travelling with 2 of his precious saxophones, as we are to head down to Jacob's recording studio in Farnham tomorrow to review the live tapes. Charlie will also guest on a couple of tracks for US new wave sprites The Bongos, who are also signed to Fetish. This is to be my first bona fide jazz gig, and I have Charlie to thank for this. Charlie lives in a comfy, semi-detached house up at Cross Pool. His enthusiasm for music is infectious.
Have you heard It's a Trip by The Last Poets, Rog? It's the funkiest track ever!
he puts it on the stereo, and it is indeed the funkiest thing I have ever heard. There are so many records to discover and treasure. Full Force by the Art Ensemble of Chicago, Body Meta by Ornette Coleman, Lenox Avenue Breakdown by Arthur Blythe, albums by Anthony Braxton, Julius Hemphill, Marion Brown, Don Cherry and David Murray. From time to time, Charlie and I will play Murray's elegant Flowers for Albert together in the rehearsal room, me splashing around in the shallow end, Charlie going off the top board as he plunges into this beautiful, malleable melody. Hungry to learn more, I cram in more jazz from the record library on Surrey Street. Home taping might be killing music, but it's giving me the kiss of life. Personalities like Rahsaan Roland Kirk, who blows two horns at once, and the man from Venus, Sun Ra. Music by Babatunde Olatunji, Cecil Taylor, Miles Davis and the towering sax of John Coltrane. Val Wilmer's As Serious as Your Life, the definitive treatise on free jazz, becomes my Bible, as I add Archie Shepp's soulful A Sea of Faces to my collection, bought second hand from Rare and Racy. Rebuilt 2 years ago, the plush environs of the Lyric Theatre couldn't be more of a contrast to the last venue I visited in Hammersmith, the tatty Clarendon pub, marooned on the A4 roundabout, just up the road. Taking a break from Ibsen and Hare, the theatre bar atmosphere is blokey, beardy and bohemian. As much as I tell myself I've got broad, inclusive tastes in music, this will be my first concert watching black musicians. It must say something about my gig-going history that the only black guy I've seen on stage in the past 3 years is the Maori bass player in Bebop Deluxe. Say Bebop Deluxe to these guys, and they'll probably think of a jam session with Charlie Parker. Beyond what I've listened to on record, my exposure to live improvised music has been confined to the rock end of the spectrum. The ground zero impact of throbbing gristle, the doleful de Tian, the impish freakery of naked pygmy voles, and a vituperative blast of Ted Milton's blurt at the Marples in a blizzard last month. Air, AACM founder McCall on drums, plus double bass player Fred Hopkins and saxophonist Henry Threadgill take to the stage. The Lyric is quieter than a class of meditating librarians. There will be none of the joshing chatter that soundtracks my usual gig experience. The mood is one of hushed approbation. It's appropriate then that Air start very softly, with minimal amplification. The saxophonist opts instead to play flute, as the drummer shakes and dings various exotic-looking pieces of percussion, while the bass player taps and knocks at the belly and bout of his instrument. Painting with sound, they conjure up a scene that could be a sleepy Thai peasant village. All that's missing is a crowing rooster. From this bucolic beginning, Henry Threadgill clips on his saxophone and starts an audacious game of musical snakes and ladders. Each member of the trio takes turns to roll the dice and make bold steps forward, come what may. Quicksilver, flurried runs up the steps of the tenor sax keys are countermanded by Fred Hopkins' glissando dive bombing down the neck of his bass. Behind him, Steve McCall rattles the skins and urges his compadres to roll again, roll again. I'm fascinated by their control. In particular, by the dramatic way they switch from surge to hush, without so much as a nod. It appears to be almost telepathic. Listening to rock bands through a big PA can feel like the music is being pushed at you in one big sonic block, even the quieter songs. I'm learning that controlled volume, each player having the skill to rise and fall on cue, can be more impactful and dynamic. You lean in for the soft bits, only for the thunder to rock you back in your seat. I'm starting to think that Fred Hopkins might be the best bass player I've ever seen. His instrument is bigger than him. Does it support Fred, or does Fred support it? This mutual dependency runs the spectrum from swaying slow dancers together in his embrace, to gentle, aching bowing, and then again to treating it mean, his fingers plucking lasciviously, beating around the F-hole with sticks and mallets. The intimacy appears to create a singular beast, part man, part maple. As Henry Threadgill rings another piercing solo from his instrument, there are unconfirmed reports of minke whales swimming up the River Thames to Hammersmith Bridge to duet with his celestial sound. Later on, over pints in the Swan, we reflect over what has been, for me, a revelatory experience. Allh, Charlie tells me, have a signature piece called Keep Right On Playing Through the Mirror Over the Water, which now makes perfect sense. Theirs is a rich mixture of elements experimenting with reflections of light and sound. Charlie and I catch the last tube back to Rod's cosy garret. For his part, Rod is sanguine about the DVA split. 4 Hours has just been released as a single from the album, and he's still keen to release a live album. Charlie tells me that Rough Trade heard an advance copy of the album last year and offered Rod £5,000 for the rights, but he turned them down. I wonder if he regrets that now. With Monday comes Richard Barone, bleary-eyed bongo-in-chief, just off the red-eye from New York City. Off we troop to Waterloo to catch the train to Farnham, where Ken Thomas is waiting for us at Jacob's Studios. No doubt inspired by last night's sorcery, Charlie tears off a ferocious sax solo which runs the gamut from gut-wrenching, low-end rumbling to kettle-boiling, bat-bothering high frequencies. On another song, Ken simply close mics Charlie's fingers as he makes his instrument's keypads into a unique percussion instrument. I am a little in awe of my bandmates' inventions. There's a full moon over Farnham as we leave Richard and Ken to get on with the Bongos album. Back at Rod's flat for one final night on his fold-out camp beds, we watch McCabe and Mrs. Miller on VHS. And for the first time in my life, the music of Leonard Cohen, sad, moribund, laughing Len, as we used to call him at school, finally makes sense to me. Another night, another little epiphany. Steve McCall left Allh in 1982. He died aged 56 in 1989. Fred Hopkins and Henry Threadgill continued to record as New Air until 1987. Hopkins died in Chicago in 1999, aged 52. Henry Threadgill, who served in the US Army in Vietnam, has appeared on over 60 albums. In 2016, he received the Pulitzer Prize for Music. You have been listening to My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts with me, your host, Roger Quayle. Thank you to Simon Elliott Kemp for the intro and outro music, and to Rionagh for the artwork. Special thank you to Charlie Collins, who is a friend to this day. Join me again next time for another episode from My Life in the Mosh of Ghosts. This is Roger Quayle saying thank you and bye-bye.